Time to make another one. Hey, come here. Come on in my pottery shop. Let me show you something. I'm going to work on a teapot lesson today. I thought maybe you'd be interested. I'm going to show you the finished product to start with. And this is one of my teapots I've been working on for a while. It's a style I've developed over the last 30 years. You see, what's interesting and challenging about a teapot is that it's really 4 different pieces that are combined to be congruous in a single body. Handle, the knot, the lid, the spout, and the body. And the tools that are required to make this teapot are, at this point I'm using 2 separate calipers. I need 2 settings on this flange for this teapot body. I'll show you that when we get to it. My trim tool, another trim tool, my needle tool. I always have to have handy in case I have an irregular top I need to trim off. There. And of course my signature design tool, which is a serrated metal rib. And almost always, if I have a large enough, flat enough bottom, I'll use a credit card to compress the bottom. I'll talk a little bit more about compression in a few minutes. To start with, we're going to go ahead and make the body for the teapot. For this size teapot, it's going to hold about 1/4 of liquid in the finished state. I use about 2 pounds, 2 3/4 pounds of clay. I must remind my students that in the centering process, figure out how to use the weight of your upper body, not just the strength of your hands and wrists. Put pressure on this clay to center. One of the considerations of making a round form, a lot has to do with your clay body. Some clay bodies are more forgiving than others. But I want to end up with a nice spherical form with a small foot. Some clay bodies won't allow you to stretch it that much, so what I do is I make the inside well small, like I want my eventual foot to end up being. But as I make the form, I'll leave it a little thicker on the bottom, which I know that later on I'll go ahead and trim away. So now let's just start with the cylinder. I'll leave it a little thicker at the top, then I'm going to cut that flange into it, right there. Another vertical pass. Notice with each pass, I'm pushing this clay in to help create that narrower foot. And slow the wheel down a little bit. Again, I'm going to push this foot in. I'm going to take some of that excess clay away with my thumb right there. On this next pass, I'm going to severely push that foot in and round the form out as I come up. This is a pretty forgiving clay body, so I can stretch it pretty wide without it collapsing. In the trimming process here. A wonderful, about 1/2 of a rib here. So we'll go down a little bit more. I cut my flange right now on gallery. Basically I'm supporting it under the lip on both sides. I'm just pushing my thumbnail straight down in the middle. Okay, now, take my two measurements. First measurement will be for the outside of this lid. Measure this area of the flange, there. The next measurement, because it's a teapot, it really requires a pretty tight fit on the inside as well. I'm going to go ahead and measure this distance from here to here. Alright, put that aside. Next, we're going to throw off the mound to create the spout and the lid. Always requires centering. Get around that. Okay, I'm going to get an idea of where I'm going to go on this extreme measurement before I start. I know that I want a very tall flange to the inside of this teapot lid. So, quick measurement. Just a hair wider on the outside. Pretty good. This interior dimension. Just checking for this part of the lid. You can see that needs to come out quite a bit. See how deep this is too. That helps when you go to tip the teapot, that the lid doesn't just fall out. Preliminary cut with my rib. Go ahead and use a wire. Soft. And the spout is always a proportional consideration. Obviously, the smaller the body, the smaller the spout. Conversely, large body, larger spout. It still should be in a proportion that's not unbalanced looking. With my beginning students, I always say something about making, the only way to make beautiful teapots is to make a lot of ugly teapots. Only by experience will you get that feeling for the proportion and that balance that you're looking for. Making this spout by making a little cylinder and severely collaring this in. Okay. Made my initial groove there with my rib. I'll go ahead and cut through with my wire. So that aside. Normally I've made, say, half a dozen teapot forms, and then also I'll make a succession of these spouts and lids. Normally I'll make an extra spout and an extra lid just in case I have a mistake or I drop something. I'll make spouts that are varying heights just to give myself an option of just to balance it out a little bit more if I feel a little quirky. And then the next part of this teapot making process, I'm going to go ahead and pull the handle. As you can see on this pot, this is a pulled handle. I'm going to pull it now so that it has time to dry and stiffen up so that I can attach it later on and not have to wait too long. In my actual production process, I make teapots over a 3-day period. I make the pieces on one day, The next day I will trim the bottoms and the lid and put the knob on the lid. I might go ahead and attach the spout and let them sit overnight, and then the third day I will come back. I'll let that handle stiffen enough by the third day. It's still under wraps, I keep it under plastic, but I want it to dry slowly. Now, right now we're going to go ahead and pull that handle. So I'm going to start that process. Lots of water. Obviously it's going to be a pretty long handle. And again, I keep hammering about this proportional relationship between things, and the size of that teapot body will determine the length and the thickness of this handle in the finished product. Not only the thickness this way, but the thickness this way as well. I used to make much bigger teapots, but I've been told by a lot of my female acquaintances that they were just too big. That's why I've cut them down to hold approximately a quart. It's enough for 3 or 4 good cups of tea. Okay, that's what a pulled handle looks like. And I will let it set up. Put it into a nice curved form. Stay there. Okay. All right, so now we go on to trimming. I start by trimming the bottom. Remember I talked about I left the inside of this pot, the foot of it small. Now you go ahead and trim off the excess here on the foot to make it a nice round spherical form. When I'm trimming, I always establish the outside parameter of the foot first. Now I'll take away as much excess clay as I can right now around the body before I do the interior part. And when I'm considering the thickness of this foot, I keep repeating myself, but I think it bears repeating. It should mimic the thickness of the wall and the thickness of the lip of the piece. But I establish that thickness in the interior parameter immediately before I start trimming from the center out there. That way I'm less likely to overshoot it. Like that. Looks about right. Every opportunity I'll go ahead and sponge off any sharp edges, removing any burrs. Later on would be like razor blades when it's finished. Sign it, date it. And this next part, I'm going to go ahead and trim the lid for the piece. And as you'll see, while I was drawing, I went ahead and I pinched out a little spot here. But sometimes you can actually add another more clay to it. What that does is it adds to the ability for the piece to not fall out when it's being poured. You just want it to grab on there. A little tip. Nicely. Take my serrated rib and go ahead and score that, a little cross hatch. I'm going to put the knob of clay. A little interesting aside with these knobs. This piece is small enough that I'm not going to worry about hollowing out the inside of this knob. It's going to be a solid piece of clay. I do want to make sure it's going to be firmly attached. Recenter it just like it's any other pot. even though it's a solid piece of clay, the real point of consideration here is that where the knob will attach to the lid, which is down here, it really needs to be about the same thickness, this dimension, compared to the thickness of the lid itself. Along the last little line, with all of the best intentions in the world, you can still develop a hairline crack right at that juncture point down here. So what I've learned to do is I just make a teeny little groove right at that point. And if there does develop a little hair crack, it'll develop right there and it'll look like I meant to put it there. For the next part of this process, I need to attach the teapot spout to the teapot body. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and raise the elevation of my working surface by using my banding wheel. I've turned off the power to my electric wheel just in case it would go off if I was to hit that pedal accidentally. Go ahead and put the body right here in front of me. I like to line up my signature, which I've already signed the pot right here, and line it up so the spout and the handle are in line with that. It just looks like it was thought out a bit better. Kind of visually see if it looks like a good match. I think that's going to work. I will cut a slight angle to the bottom of the spout. Just like so. While I have it in my hand, I'm going to trim out some of this excess clay, make it thinner, and also it gives the fluid a little more surface area to travel. One of the considerations of making functional pottery is that you're balancing the aesthetics, the actual look of the piece, with the ergonomics, the function of the piece. It has to do with the feel and the actual flow of the liquid. But the more I can trim this out by hand, the easier that fluid can travel through the tube. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and align this. Make sure I got my signature right on it. Yep, there it is. Here. And I'm just going to right now make a line around the outside of this spout. I'm not going to attach it yet, obviously. It wouldn't do any good. You can see that little outline here. It tells me where I need to put my holes. Because one of the acquiescences to the tradition of making teapots is that you include a strainer in the body wall. Go ahead and use, this is the bottom part of my metal probe here, metal needle tool. And of course again, timing is essential with this because if you wait too long, it's impossible to just easily push through the body. Another little tip with these spouts. Now I make all these pieces at the same time. I make the body, I make the spout, and I make the lid. After about 15 minutes, I'll take the spouts and I'll put them under plastic so that they're very, very wet. Easier to blend that into the body later on. And if I've let it dry a little prematurely, I'll take a little bowl of water and I'll let it sit in there and soften up again while I'm doing the spout holes. Ready? I go ahead and use my serrated edged rib to do the scoring around that line that I drew. A little bit of slip. Of course, you're preparing slightly drier body for that very wet spout. And they're pretty straight. Go ahead and smooth it in. You can see this little void up here. I'm just going to take a little coil of clay. sponge and clean that up area. And because of my little wabi-sabi lines you see around the pot, I will kind of blend that into these lines that I put on the spout. Now I'm going to do a little cut on the teapot spout, which again is pretty traditional and something that especially beginning students have a hard time understanding. So especially when you're just beginning and you're compressing this tube, all that torque makes it want to, basically you're compressing it and you're twisting it a little bit. So when especially when you're first beginning, you have to learn how to even that out before you take it off the wheel head. When you make your cut, you need to make your cut so that it can turn back. So I usually make the cut like so. And then during the firing, actually it will turn like that. Now, after 35 years of experience, mine don't turn much because I still correct it before I take it off. So I'm going to make my cut pretty straight on. Let's see what I'm talking about. So, now, if there is a secret to having a body or a spout that doesn't leak, is to make a sharp edge. So pull that out, make it a sharper edge. I even heard of the theory that you would put just a single little mark right at the middle of this piece. Gives a place for that last drip of tea to stop. Okay, so now we have our body, has the spout on it, we have our lid, the knob on it. The next step is to attach that handle that we had pulled and we're letting it dry. Let's go ahead and get that next. In preparation for that, I will go ahead and score the areas that I know that I'm going to attach the handle to. Bit of slip. If you run out of slip, you can just use very wet clay to do the same thing. You're just conditioning this dryer body for that slightly wetter handle. And of course, you want to make sure that it's lined up with the spout, obviously. It sounds obvious until you're doing it, then sometimes you'll forget and all of a sudden you'll find your handle way over here. Okay, here we got our handle. Obviously it's way bigger than I needed because we don't need a gigantic handle like that. So I'm going to start by taking a little bit off this thicker end. Kind of get an idea of how much handle I need, so I'm going to break off the other end. I need to re-moisten it as well. So go ahead and cut that off here. And now I'm going to, just like I pulled the handle initially, I'm going to just recondition this with a little bit of water, a little bit thinner on each end where it's going to attach. So you want to wait until these handles are stiff enough to hold their form. Trim this flat across, like so. It's a little bit feathered and softer here at the ends. So this is where it gets a little bit dicey with making sure it's lined up, because looking from this side I really can't tell if it's exactly lined up with that spout. So before I go much further, I will look at it like so. It looks pretty good. Turn it so that I can see easily across to the spout. My initial placement, but then I want to look at the profile. It's a little tall, but I kind of like it. Go with that height, because I'm still going to manipulate the shape a little bit. Attachment by pushing here, blending it in with the body a little bit. A little extra loop-de-loop there. So, come back over here and firmly attach it. I do have another type of handle that I put on teapots occasionally, especially if I have an order for someone that wants to be able to put their teapot in the microwave. Then I'll do a side handle like that. But right now, let's worry about this. I'm going to go ahead and round it out a little bit for just about one of my last little parts. I'm going to figure out where I want to put my little thumb stop to give me a little bit more leverage. I say right about there. Just a teeny amount of clay. Drip of water. Again, conditioning that for the wetter clay. Like so. And I do want to keep an eye on this while it dries. Sometimes the handles have a tendency to droop one way or another. Maybe I'll go through the day and I'll be looking at it and I'll